let you know, there was an email sent out about that it be, for the thought exchange, that it be 2 to 3 items for being prioritized for the budget. My concern is why cut off at 2 or 3? It's being, there's no particular cutoff? Okay.
Not for the thought exchange. The prompt after the thought exchange is now we're gonna try to prioritize. But the thought exchange itself, there's not a cutoff.
Okay, yeah, okay. Yeah, like even afterwards, like prioritizing, like if there's not necessarily a cutoff, like at 2 or 3 or anything like that, like, okay, thank you.
It's just in order, no, the intention is to try to focus our thinking so that we can really be thinking about what are the top 2 or 3 priorities SEAC would want the supervisor to know they're thinking about in terms of the budget process.
Okay, thank you.
All right, are there any other changes or additions to the agenda? All right, seeing no more. All of those in favor? Online, if you can use the raise hand function, I would appreciate that. And if you can't, just unmute yourself. Perfect. All right, so that's carried. So moving on, we have no delegations tonight. So moving on to item 5, review of the Special Education Advisory Committee minutes. I call for a mover to approve the minutes of the January 7th, 2026 meeting. Okay, Lindsay Copeland.
I have a bit of concerns about the minutes. It was quite sparse in terms, like, it was just one action item. I even spoke to a parent today about it. It was that echoed my concerns and even articulated much better. It's what's called an action item minutes today, particularly, and it kind of echoed concerns in the past repeatedly over the last year and even year and a half. Say the minutes getting more and more sparse, and today's minutes was particularly sparse. There was no like a French comprendu, no summary of what was said, basically in of what was talked about in not even in the basic terms of what was said in the last meeting. Whereas in the past, in the SEAC, we did have at least some basic summary. In like 2 years ago, we would have a summary of what was said, and even though it was even still sparse, and right now there's nothing there, and that's really concerning. And even Minister Calandra had mentioned that even though parents might not be able to, if they're not able to, we might not have the meetings live streamed, officially live into the public. But if they're not able to attend, they're still able to get should be able to get. I'm paraphrasing, something like having some minutes to read, to be able to read some minutes afterwards. Right now, this is not something to be able to read something. There's no summary. It's just an action item that we have one item and there's nothing to read. That's of concern. And so what we have had previously, I think on more than one occasion, Sonia raised the lack of detail. I think even Lindsay echoed that, and there's more at the table. And some people that are here today have raised that concern. It is something so quite around the table we are very concerned about. And I think today's with the technology that exists, and I'm not sure if it was me who raised it, but I've used technology at OCASC with like at the last meeting. I noticed that being attending virtually, meeting is being recorded, so I assume it's also being transcribed, with transcripts. With AI technology, using a secure environment, it can be easily summarized in a very, very, safe way, the liability safe way, where in detail or less detail, whatever is comfortable with, and for the minutes, and where at least people asked around the table and the public can be able to follow what's going on, and so we can have be able to follow and have any history, so we can go back. Okay, what did we talk about? And for us, it's important too. We as members, we can go back. Okay, what was that last meeting, and what would we talk about, and what, so we can have a history and be able to work with and as members, and or else it's something important to function with as a committee, and as I mentioned, for the public to be able to follow, who can attend. Many are for whatever for could be disability reasons and medical reasons, and it could be for just simple other accommodations. They're working, simply. They can't attend on that day. And
sure, I can comment. As you know, the decision was made last year to move to more action item oriented minute taking. I can bring the concern back and certainly recognize and hear that your desire is to see more fulsome minutes that represent the discussion more. So I will bring that back and see if we can make adjustments to the current plan for action-oriented minutes.
thank you.
Sonia?
Just while we're talking about it, I just wanted to echo what Anthony is saying, and we have brought it up before, and I understand that we want to have action-oriented items highlighted in the minutes, but speaking as someone who hasn't been at the last 2 meetings, and I took time to open up the minutes from the last 2 meetings, I have zero idea what happened at the meeting. I don't know the discussions, I don't know the questions that were brought up. For example, in response to a query, staff will consider adding a staffing and budget discussion to the forward agenda. What was the query? What did it refer to? What will the discussion be going forward? I'm not asking for a play-by-play of what everybody said, but a little more in-depth as to what that is for committee members who aren't able to be here. Not even, like, if you take the public out of it, right? Which you shouldn't, but you know what I'm saying? Like, as a committee member, I don't know what happened. I have reached out to try and watch the recording as a committee member. I've been told no. And so that piece is concerning for me as a committee member, that I can't have the information that I need to be prepared for the meeting today. So I just wanted to echo that and leave it there.
Okay, Lindsay?
Won't belabor the point, just want to say I support Anthony and Sonia. Agreed.
And just further echo, like, my understanding is like at the Toronto School Board, SEAC, they took it to the point that they actually refused to accept the minutes at the last meeting. So they didn't pass the minutes because it was such a serious issue.
Thank you. Alright, so are there any other comments or questions regarding the minutes, omissions, errors, anything? Alright, so we're going to see if we pass the minutes. All those in favor?
I guess there's no alternative to just passing the minutes.
No.
There's no like passing with no objections, it's not a thing. I mean, they just made that thing up.
Yeah, okay, yeah, so it's not debatable.
Why do we go through the process? Sorry, I don't understand the process. Why do we go through the process if it's not debatable?
So my understanding is that amendments are welcome to be
Right.
considered. And then I guess at that point, you're able to say you're in favor of these minutes being accepted or you're not.
Yeah.
And so it's not so much about I think a discussion happened. we've received your feedback, I will take it back to kind of the governance table or the governance team and discuss if there's any possibility of adjusting how we are currently responding. And I can provide feedback from that conversation at the next meeting, so that people, I can hopefully be able to provide you at least with a response from our perspective, how we will continue. So I think you can be opposed to not accepting the minutes.
Yeah, so we're gonna do the vote, so all those in favor? All those opposed?
You just need to accept. Okay.
Okay, so, sorry, can we just have a vote on opposed again? Okay, so that's not approved. All right, so we're definitely gonna take all of these suggestions and comments into consideration and see if we can make them a bit more robust and, all right? Okay, the forward agenda has been provided for information purposes. Are there any additions or changes? Okay, Lindsay?
Yes, at last month's meeting, I had, expressed a desire to sort of dig in a little bit, like there was a decrease in, some of the staff, members in the budget, I think dropped by 2, was it, I'll have to go back and take a look, but, I don't know if it was the itinerants, I can go back and get it specifically, but, I was just, I had asked if we could, sort of dig into the impact of those positions that hadn't been backfilled. Just sort of looking at, maybe it falls under a policy discussion, and I see that there's a blank on May 6th, so could I suggest that maybe we have that conversation on the 6th of May? Great.
Alright, so we're gonna move on to, or are there any other, additions or changes to the forward agenda? Alright, seeing none.
What do you mean by the forward agenda, just to be sure I understand?
Like the grid where we have,
Okay,
each month with the.
The forward agenda is intended to be any topics for discussion that you're looking to have brought forward, to discuss the meeting.
there was a bit of concern over because we have the upcoming, the review of the full education plan, and in it, there's this IEP standard within the document. My concern within that standard, there is the dispute resolution part of the standard, and it is a bit outdated. So what, do we wait till we get to that, or do it ahead of time to discuss the dispute resolution process to update it? Or I'd rather, instead of sending an email, discuss it here at the table about how to, it's a very brief discussion,
Sure.
but to discuss update, because we've changed the whole process quite a bit over time, over the past 2 years, and especially this past year. And that part of the document hasn't been updated at all, and it could be improved further too. I think we've gone a long way in how our thought processes are, and how we can go about doing things.
Sure. So I will say that, as you know, in the early, meetings, from September to December, typically we're looking at each of those standards. And so that IEP standard is one of the ones that we review. So that would be a good time, to do that. We've already done that process. That being said, I'm happy to add it to one of the discussion items in the future agenda, specifically that standard we can bring back to the table, if you'd like to have a discussion about it. But that's the intention when we parcel it out at the beginning of the year, to start to look at those, just keeping in mind that that's retroactive, right? And so, but I think we can look to have a discussion about that even next month. So if there are specific areas that you wanna, speak about, then that would be fine.
All right, are there any other, additions or changes that people would like to see? Okay, so, we're gonna move on to the matter of discussion. As discussed in the January 7th, 2026 meeting, tonight's matter for discussion is regarding budget priorities. The discussion question posed at the meeting was, given the current financial mandate of the board, what top 2 or 3 priorities would SEAC recommend staff focus on for the upcoming budget cycle? We'll be using the thought exchange platform to start the discussion process. I will note that only members of the committee are able to participate in this. And with that, I call upon Superintendent Stout and General Manager Rayham to, from the Research, Evaluation and Analytics Department to introduce item 6.1.
Thank you. So as part of this, as you know, one of the mandates of SEAC is to engage in discussion about budget and priorities that you see as important pieces of information for the staff to consider when going through the budget process. So that is our intention this evening. I wanted to take a little bit of time to remind you of some of the recommendations that the committee brought forward last year and some of the work that we've done this year with respect to what you brought forward to us last year. And then, as we shared, we'll go through the thought exchange process. We've divided this into 2 ideas. One is kind of that minds-on activity, where we really want to get you thinking about what the different services are that your local association believes are important to special education for students in our district. And then from that, through the thought exchange process, you rank each other's ideas. And so we'll get in a little bit more of that technical piece when we get to that point. And then we'll have a follow-up discussion with the prompt around, now that we've kind of seen each other's ideas, are there specific areas that you would recommend to staff and to the supervisor for consideration moving forward through the budget cycle? So if we can advance to the next slide. So I wanted to provide you with a little bit of a summary of, from the discussion last year. I went back through my notes and wanted to make sure I captured some of the key themes from that discussion. And so you see in front of you kind of 3 core areas that you recommended to us from last year. It's not surprising that that staffing considerations was one of the recommendations you brought forward, specifically around ensuring that there were enough EAs in the system to support students, but also looking at some consideration for the role of our support team members in schools, and kind of how those educators are used, what they're used for, and is that really helping in the way that we are hoping to get the benefit of those supports. I think it's important to note that educational assistance, that continues to be a theme that we hear, and so we continue to be aware that that's important for members of the community and staff alike. The second piece that I'd like to highlight, or that you shared with us as area for important focus, was around professional development for staff. Specifically, you highlighted staff safety, inclusive practices, and special education practices. And then lastly, another core theme that you shared with us was around the communication with families and consistency of practice between our programs. And so that was really looking to clarify future plans, to look at the resources that exist and the processes that exist, and again, that consistency of practices between our schools. And so with those recommendations, I wanted to share a little bit with you about what we're doing. And of course, we're in February, so we're halfway through our academic year, and still lots of school year ahead of us and work to be done. But some of the core things that are happening currently, this is certainly not a fulsome list, but is intended to be a snapshot of some of those things that we are working on. So you've heard from the staffing perspective, you've heard a lot about our new central EA model that we've rolled out in all elementary schools. And the purpose of this model certainly is to provide that direct support to students, but also to be that on the ground coaching and modeling and walking alongside our EA team. Those members are providing groups in schools, roots of empathy, they're running peers, they're running stress lessons, and they're supporting school teams and students alike. We've also launched two working groups, one specifically around educational assistance, and so that includes both school and central team members. And the idea there is to review a variety of the aspects of the role of the educational assistant, looking at our EA allocation process, as well as some key considerations that we need to be thinking about as a district moving forward. A second working group is around the LST and LRT work that needs to be done. And so last spring, actually, we launched a survey of our learning support teachers and learning resource teachers. And so since then, we've been reviewing the feedback that was provided, working with our program evaluator, and a small working group is about to be established to kind of dig deeper into those roles and ensure that we have clarity. That's leaning into some of that consistency piece for our staff, but also in ensuring that the work that's being done by these folks is being appropriately characterized, but also is the best way we can serve students. Lastly, in that staffing consideration piece, certainly all of us are out visiting schools, but when I'm out visiting schools, I'm having conversations directly with all of the school staff, including principals and the learning support teachers, classroom teachers, educational assistants, talking about their inclusive practices, talking about what it looks like around kind of the schedule of support in the schools. So how are we ensuring that students are getting targeted educational support, but also that direct student support as needed, and that those allocations are being shared amongst all the students who are requiring that support. In the professional development vein, I kind of organized this in 3 approaches for you. I think it's important to note that all of our provincial professional development days have a key focus on literacy and math, and we embed directly in their practices universal design for learning, what inclusivity looks like in the classroom, how students can be supported, and what differentiation looks like, so that a variety of learners within one classroom can be supported, and that they're appreciated for who they are and what they can bring to that classroom. In addition, another area that was highlighted by the committee last year was safety. And so I wanted to share with you that behavior management systems is a training that we offer district-wide for all employees. At this point, over 1,100 employees have been trained in over 50 sessions this year. Those trainings are led by our central team members, and the intention is to really provide some of those core proactive strategies that help to support students, but then moving into, again, those reactive strategies as necessary to support students. Some other core areas, so the second kind of approach that we use in terms of professional development is around kind of more those traditional type trainings where we have people coming together as a small group to go through a training activity. So that might be something like restorative practices, it could be suicide prevention, we do violent threat risk assessment training. We've had educational assistants in our district come together and learn with Dr. Tranter. He is the author of The Third Path and provides some really fantastic opportunities for educators to think about that relationship-based approach. We host LST networks, so those are meetings where LSTs come together and they work together, and collaboration with our central team to be thinking about some of their core areas of business. So those are some of the more kind of traditional types of trainings that we run throughout the year. And then lastly, I think it's important to note the school-based supports that we provide to school-based teams. And so that could look like an itinerant teacher coming in and working directly with the teacher, one-on-one around kind of what it is like to have a student who requires a bin system to help them access learning throughout the day. It could be accessing office hours that our professional services staff offer, so our occupational therapists and our behavior analysts and many others offer office hours for drop-in for staff, where they can speak more kind of generally about support for a student. We also have opportunities where our staff will go to school staff meetings and provide presentations about trauma-informed practices or emotion validation, emotion coaching, as well as supporting students with regulation needs. And then the final area that I wanted to comment on was around the communication with parents and caregivers. So certainly we've discussed our updated parent guides on our website and available through the schools for IEP and IPRC processes. We've spent a lot of time going through those to try to make them accessible for families, but also recognizing that special education can be intimidating for families, and so trying to provide accessible and open ways to have dialogue, not only with the school-based team, but if necessary, central team members. We also provide parent support through webinars and in-person events, and so throughout this year, you'll recall we had Dr. Chang present about executive functioning. We had a brief presentation from our social workers that was in collaboration with folks from Roger Nielsen House. We've also provided parent sessions on understanding language. Lastly, I think it's important to highlight the ongoing need to strengthen and continue partnerships with community and within community. We work closely with many organizations, including the Parent Lifeline of Eastern Ontario. We recently had a conversation with Autism Ontario around some work that we're hoping to do for World Autism Awareness and Acceptance Month about a panel where we can have team members, our team members, alongside Autism Ontario teams, having conversations with families. And certainly we have partnerships that go on throughout the year. We had a summer partnership last year with LDAO. And so those are just some examples of the partnerships that we lean into. We certainly are open and collaborative with any community partner who we can find that shared opportunity to provide support to families, but also to students. So that's some of the stuff that we have been doing in response to some of the feedback we received from you last year. As we head in to this next part of the activity, we're going to get into the thought exchange. And so I'm going to invite General Manager Rahim to kind of walk us through this process of what's going to happen. And this is your opportunity to kind of gather, put in ideas, and to rate each other's ideas. I will say we are going to have staff participate in helping to load in some of the services, just to help get ideas going, as we recognize that we might have a more fulsome understanding of the services that are offered than you might. But we certainly are. Then we will not be rating or starring the ideas. The ideas we want to hear from the committee members. So I'll pass it to you.
Thank you, and thank you to all of you for having me. It's fun to be at this table. I always enjoy the conversations. It feels weird to be sitting here without a stack of data with me, but we're going to do something different today, so I think it'll be fun. So the goal of this is to gather your input on this work, and so we're going to do a quick thought exchange. Before you start to participate, I'll kind of walk you through exactly how it works so you know what to expect. So the goal is to better understand the impact of the services that are deployed or allocated specifically through the Learning Support Services Department, and so that we can help identify top priorities for the future. In your response, we want you to think about both existing services as well as new ideas for services that might not already be in place that you think is something that's important for the team to consider. So the question that you'll see in the exchange is, what does your local association consider to be the most impactful special education services for students? The exchange is completely anonymous, so it does not track who you are that shares each thought. However, in your written responses, Whatever you share will be shared exactly as you've written it with staff and with other committee members. So please don't include your name, please don't include your association, otherwise you will no longer be anonymous. So it's important for you to share your ideas, but without your personal information. And then during the survey, you'll have the chance to see the thoughts of others and decide how much you agree with that particular thought, and assign it anywhere from 1 to 5 stars, 5 indicating a strong agreement that thought really resonates with you, 1 indicating not so much, you think there are other things that should be higher priorities. So in just a moment, I will put the link up on the screen for those that don't have a QR code as well, so that you can go and type in. And remember, you'll participate anonymously, but others will see your thoughts verbatim. Each thought has 2 parts. So the first text box that you see will be where you share your thought. So that's the service that you find is most impactful. And then the box underneath is where you explain why you think that that particular service is so important. And the thoughts and why they're important are shared with others one at a time. So be really precise in your thought. You can share as many thoughts as you want, but please share them one at a time. That makes it easier for others to rate them and decide how they feel about that particular idea. Once you've shared some thoughts and then had the opportunity to rate some, I encourage you to go back and share more. Normally, after you've had the chance to see thoughts and star them, new ideas come to you. It's a bit of an iterative process. And then, of course, at the end, you'll have access to the Discover page where you can see the thoughts that floated to the top amongst the group. So we are going to go ahead and get started. If you want to stop sharing. Thank you. Perfect. So there's the QR code again, but you can also go to tejoin.com and type in that code, and that will open up the thought exchange for you. We'll spend a little bit of time allowing you to click through and start sharing the thoughts, and then we'll start a conversation about what we're seeing.
Okay, and just a reminder, the intention is for the committee to participate and not for members of the public. Thanks. Okay, so we'll have about 10 minutes to be in there and looking at the questions and putting your responses and reacting to other people's.
If you need longer, we can extend. It's not a.
haven't moved ahead to the starring phase yet and you're still sharing, I encourage you to move into the starring phase now to start reviewing some of the thoughts shared by other committee members, so that you can assign some ratings, see thoughts that maybe capture things you were already planning to add, or get sparked for some new ideas that you can add more. This is great. I see we have 51 thoughts shared and over 250 ratings so far, and still coming in, which means there's a lot of great feedback in there for us to continue to unpack. Does the committee feel like they need a little bit more time to continue to add to it? Perfect, great. we'll give it 2 more minutes. We'll give it 2 more minutes for the continued participation in it now. And then Superintendent Stout will facilitate some conversation around what we're seeing in the exchange. And we will leave it open until about 10 o'clock. So if you do continue to have ideas that you want to add or things that you want to go back into, you will have time to do so following the conversation. 2 more minutes.
Thank you, Andrea, for facilitating that. The silence in the room certainly shows that folks were hard at work. And just to remind you, this will stay open until 10 o'clock. So as we're having conversations now, if a thought pops into your mind, you can still add it. Furthermore, if you want some more time to go in and add those stars, it certainly benefits us. And I have to say, first, I appreciate some of the specificity. I think the nice thing about Thought Exchange is that it does capture kind of not only the theme, but also a little bit more detail. So I think that is helpful. I think also it's really powerful for you all to be able to see some similarities in your thinking, but also the diversity of the suggestions that comes forward. It helps us to really dive a little bit deeper into some of your thinking. And I also want to say that I appreciate this kind of shared understanding and collective thinking around the task. And so I am grateful for the feedback, and I think we're up to 469 star ratings, which speaks to how we can really be getting that much more precise, and which areas here anyways have been identified as kind of the key areas that you'd like us to be turning our minds to. Some of the themes that I saw, although I'm happy, we'll open up to the table for further discussion, but I did see kind of again that need for resources in the classroom, educational assistance, but also itinerant teachers coming in to support educators. That high quality of professional development was certainly highlighted, and around some of the kind of specifics around safety, BMS training, but also other areas of training that can support staff in providing the best service that they can for students. And so with that, I don't know if there's any committee members who have a desire to raise their hand. I will, when get a chance, Heather, when it's back over to you, pulling up the prompt that we did give you at the end of the last meeting, just around I don't think it's surprising to anybody in the room that we have a current financial mandate that certainly has us limited in terms of how we're going to go and grow and expand, perhaps. But what I will say is that I think we have a lot of fantastic ideas of where you'd like us to be focusing some of our priority thinking when it comes to special education services and programs in the district. And so just would like to open up to the table if anybody has anything further they would like to add or build upon or ask maybe a question about in terms of kind of this discussion this evening. Oh, can you, if someone raises a hand, will pop into the square? Can you? I don't know. Thank you.
Okay, Lindsay?
Yeah, Kate, I agree with you with a lot of the items that have surfaced. There's definitely been quite a bit of overlap, so I think, you know, many of us are thinking a lot of the same things and seeing the same issues. One of the things that sort of stands out for me that is the, you know, first of all, you have some great social workers working with you. What we're finding is that often they're kind of brought in almost like when the problem is too late. And I don't know whether that's a capacity issue or whether that's a hesitancy because, you know, our parents are gonna be worried that you're turning into a social worker. But certainly our experience has been that they are very, very helpful for overworked parents to help navigate the system. If there's a capacity issue there, if that's what's driving the reticence to bring them in sooner, I think that's something that has to be looked at. Similarly, assessments, you know, as you know, for voice for children who are hearing impaired, like yes, itinerants, yes, equipment. I don't think we're seeing many problems there though, but if there's something else, if there's an assessment required, you know, it just seems that there's quite a delay for assessments. And I bring this up because of there are several sources that are talking about the increase in anxiety in children, particularly post-COVID, but also for children who are hearing impaired. When you've got a sense that's impaired, you're constantly scanning the environment for threats, and when a sense is impaired, well, your anxiety is heightened, your stress level is heightened, and are more prone to anxiety. So, you know, having those mental health supports, you know, at the elementary age, at a very young age is important for our kids too. I'll leave it there.
Anyone else?
I find, I came prepared with certain suggestions and like a whole bunch. And it's just the way, I really appreciate like even the way the things the items that surged up, and I agreed with quite a lot of them, like the mainstream ones that kept reoccurring and they were very high priority. They were spot on, I found. But at the same time, the ones I came prepared for were things that were from parents, like first-hand items that parents keep coming up to me that on a very frequent basis, representatives from school councils and even chairs themselves. And it was just the way the question was phrased. It was very hard for me to even integrate it into because the way the question was phrased, for me to integrate my suggestions into it. I was trying to chew in my suggestions into it, and to in a timely basis even too. And so sometimes, and even more, it's what I'm finding, like based on the feedback provided. It's like I'm seeing a theme where I'm bringing in these things, and where the committee is that you have two levels. I'm finding two levels of concerns. It's like, this is my gut reaction. Is that you have higher level where you have students that are very high needs, because our representatives here a lot are very already in high needs, and we're identifying high needs responses. And me from OCAS, the reactions I'm getting are is a lot are from parents who from the field, and then the represent the co-chairs and the chairs, I mean, and the representatives of school councils are a lot often parents that are just even struggling to get their kids. The students, they have special needs, and they're trying to even just get identified and trying to get their needs met, and getting through the system to be identified in special needs, and assessed and things like that, and there's a gap there, trying to at that very stage level, and understanding them, and perhaps there'd be useful to have a thought exchange for this particular, maybe with the school councils, with the parents themselves direct, so at two levels, with the school councils, doing the same sort of exercise with the school councils, and also with the parents directly that have IEPs and IPRCs, or trying to even get an IEP, or trying to get IPRC, not even getting to get it to that stage, and struggling with it, what their this whole process, and their being at that level.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting suggestion about could we do a version of this with school council. I think that's something we can certainly take back and think about and explore. One, as always, if you have organized your notes in such a way that's meaningful to you and you want to share them, please send them along to me, and know that it will be considered in the same way that this exercise was considered. The other thing that I would say is, we certainly recognize, we phrase this in such a way to really get us focused in on the special education supports and services that are currently existing. New ones certainly were welcome to be added, but I think that for the purpose of this discussion, that's kind of why we angled it that way. As I said, your feedback is always welcome though, so happy to receive it by email or have a phone conversation or whatever is helpful.
I just wanted to, I guess I'll just cover off what we think is important for students, and I think that OCDSB actually does a pretty good job, but I think it needs to continue as we move forward in all of the work and how services are offered out to students. I think that understanding the different environments that different students need. So understanding the sensory environment, the learning environment, the teaching methods, the different sort of classes that we have right now that are available, how maybe some of that can be brought into a mainstream classroom, right? Where students who can be in a mainstream classroom would actually get a little more benefit, but students who needed to be in a separate classroom could still get that support that they needed if they had complex or higher needs, or intellectual disabilities, and it called for that. I think that really understanding the different environments and the different needs is something that that we do, but we need to continue to keep of the utmost importance in order for students to succeed. Outside of that, I think, there is some work to do with assessments. I know Anthony, you guys, Lindsay and Anthony have both brought up assessments. super important for for parents, to be able to have access to assessments, in an efficient way. So, I know that there are lots of different avenues and different assessments that are available, but very long wait periods, and so what happens in between that, which kind of segues into my next thing, which is just parent information and communication surrounding assessments, IEPs, IPRCs, service delivery models for students. So those things are all really sort of top of mind. Making sure that parents really understand what's available and how their student can be supported. Different types of classrooms, I'm kind of going all over the place, but different types of classrooms that are available are great. Some SPCs may have less of a focus on academics, which can affect later outcomes. So I think kind of looking at how we're streamlining or how we're balancing, I guess would be the better way to say it, how we're balancing life skills, social skills, behavioral skills, and balancing those with academics in those different supportive environments is really important to facilitate success later as they get down the road in their academic journey. That's what I got so far.
Anybody else? Is that Melcher with their hand up? Melcher, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, there was a great comment about providing time for professionals to collaborate, and I think that can't be overstated. We get these experts in the school, whether it's the new EA model that we have now or an itinerant, and they have great suggestions, and some of it, we can see from modeling, but then there's a lot of discussion that needs to happen to get everybody on the same page. And, these people might want to have a conversation, but the teacher's running for duty or to eat or is preparing for the next block. We also want to get the EA on board, and we need to have that conversation with the spec ed team, with the LRT that might be supporting. And so, I think making sure that all of those pieces get connected. I know time is not easy to get, but I think that's super important. And then the other thing I just wanted to mention is a lot about staff training, and of course I agree with that. And I know earlier in the fall you had mentioned that you were supporting teachers in getting, I believe it was Spec Ed Part 1, and I just wondered if, first of all, I don't remember how many teachers that was, and I didn't know if you were just doing one block or it was going to go for term 2 as well. And just to make sure everybody knows what that is, like that, the special education, there are 3 parts, part 1, 2, and 3. There are additional qualification courses that are like university level courses, so they're not cheap. And our local does fund $500 every 2 years for teachers to take a course, but I think the cheapest one is from Edfo Provincial, which is $650. And of course, teachers are taking those on their own time, so doing all that additional work on top of their workload. So all that to say, I just wanted to let everybody know that, but also to ask again, how many teachers will have that opportunity this week. Thank you.
Thanks, Melcha. Certainly, so we do have specific funds that come in from the province that support students getting teachers getting additional qualifications in special education part 1. We always have more teachers requests than we have funds to provide, unfortunately. I'll have to get back to you, and so I'll make note to bring back the number of teachers we were able to support with that amount of money for you for next time. But thanks for the question, and certainly, like I said, there's always more requests than unfortunately we can provide.
Chris?
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to speak here, and I just wanted to maybe bring a little bit of perspective from members that I represent, who are the EAs and the ECs in the Outer Pearl District School Board. And especially considering, looking at the next discussion for the thought exchange and what priorities should be. And I did as well, and as Superintendent Stout noted, the recurring theme of more EA support, and just to give some broader perspective there, and from what I hear from my members on a consistent basis is the increase in demands that are put on EAs in particular across the district as students are coming in with higher needs, whatnot. I don't think that that's a surprise to anybody. Superintendent Stout talked about scheduling within the buildings and whatnot, and I've had a lot of conversations with our EAs about their schedules, and in a lot of schools, they look like they're scheduling basically in 10 minutes at a time, where they're jumping from one class to the next, to the next, to the next. And, they're doing it, and, I think that's a result of our EA population being stretched extremely thin because of the needs. I think principals in the schools, especially our elementary schools, are being forced to sort of triage the needs that are rising in the school. A lot of times, of course, as it should, safety trumps everything, and so that's where the needs tend to arise and draw from from other duties or other supports that the EAs can provide to students with IEPs and that require those supports. As we're looking at priorities and notwithstanding, the mandate of the financial mandate of the board, the current model with the REAs being stretched as they are, is also lending itself to probably more burnout and more absenteeism and people needing to take time for their own mental health. So we have maybe a lack of qualified EAs that are out there, but I suspect that providing more of those supports to sort of spread the workload to make sure that the students are getting the IEP designated supports that they deserve can go a long way to easing the pressure on that and to cut down on those types of things that are stretching the financial mandate of the board as well. So just some perspective as I hear from my members directly for this body to consider in making recommendations.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Are there any other questions? Go ahead.
Yes, yeah, it's just Chris's last comment there, it just really echoes my point, like I'm trying to bring today prepared. It's like one of the points is related to getting parents IEPs through, like, even whether it be funding for IEPs, getting their IEPs really established, and if a child doesn't even get their needs identified properly, then there's no funding for it, and then there's no resources established for each child. Then the school board doesn't even have the adequate funding because it's not recognized. Their needs are not recognized, legally recognized. Then there's no resources attached to it from the school, from the province, and then you don't have adequate resources at the end of the day, and the whole administrative networking for each and every child that needs it, and it's just under-resourced. And then it causes disruption for the other children too. And it's very problematic and legally problematic because you have issues that surge from that. And it could be, it might not be a minor case, it could be a very severe case too, that is unidentified or unresolved, and it could be because the parent doesn't know how to address it, doesn't know how to communicate it. It needs to be worked with. Parents need to be there needs to be better communication. There needs to be better help for the parents to be able to work better with the school board so that they don't. There's a lot. I come across this often. A lot of parents and chairs of the school councils recognize this, that a lot of parents are afraid to or don't know how simply to work with the system. And that there really needs to be better work at this level.
Yep, Sonia?
I just prefer a discussion, and apologies for missing last month. But that question is staring me in the face, given the current financial mandate of the board. What would we recommend? I just wanted to try and get some clarity on some of the numbers that I was looking at in the revised estimates that were provided last meeting. And I think it segues into kind of what we're talking about here and what our priorities should be moving forward. Just trying to understand where some of the numbers are staffing being cut, numbers being cut here. What assurances do we have as a committee, and how can we understand what is being cut, like the why behind it being cut? Special education should be the last thing being cut. I think we've said it at the table a few times. It's a human right. So I'm wondering, like, what assurances do we have as a committee looking at this, knowing, like, how do we know that everything else has been cut first? So if this is a human right, and this is the priority that we're speaking to at this table, why are we seeing so many cuts in staffing and support when we know that in order to support in whatever kind of model we want to give to these kids, that we're gonna need bodies and we're going to need staffing to make it work, and we're going to need some really creative thinking, but we're still having to cut? I just don't understand where the correlation is, you know what I mean? Like, how do we know that this is the most responsible thing when it doesn't support the rights of these students? So I'm digressing a little, but yeah.
I'm not, so I guess in terms of assurances, I will say to you that as a district, we have all, you've heard the supervisor say, you've heard Director Kay say, you've heard me say that we agree special education is of high priority, and we need to be centering that in any decisions that we are making. I think we are also facing a $14 million deficit in our special education budget, and so we have to be realistic about that. And as a district, how we're going to address our overall deficit is something that we do have to face at this time. I will say that I have been spending the last few months diving deep into a variety of different aspects of this work, as I had done last year and will continue to do moving forward. Looking at models across the province, having discussions with my colleagues across the province. Special education is, every board in the province is in a deficit when it comes to special education, and we put money into special education despite the fact that maybe the number that we get from the special education fund isn't matching the service that we're providing. I think you've heard me say before that in the Ottawa Carleton District School Board, the way we have organized our special education resources is a very expensive model. And so because we have the high number of specialized program classes that we have, that particular model does cost our district an extreme amount of money. And as I mentioned last year, we are an outlier when it comes to the number of specialized program classes that we have. And I don't think it's something we can turn our backs to and say, but we really like this model. And so certainly we had a lot of conversations through the elementary program review last year, and heard loud and clear from this committee as well as from the board of trustees last year that wasn't something that was felt could be addressed at this time. But I will say that it does contribute significantly to our deficit. And so we can continue to have that model, but it will continue to be not funded in the way, we don't get more money because we have that model. We made that decision as a district. And so it is something we do have to face together. It is a conversation we have to have together. I think those are the facts when it comes to kind of that. Now, in terms of the reassurances, I will continue to try to uncover every single possible place I can to find money to support students with special education needs. I think we have made some fantastic gains in our district in terms of inclusive practices and the conversations we're having about that. That will continue. I think that there are structures and systems that we need to put in place to ensure that we are being effective and efficient in the use of our funds that we spend in special education. I think that there are ways to maintain a version of what we currently have in terms of a service delivery model, but we also can likely streamline and look for ways to perhaps ensure that students' needs are being met, not only in perhaps a segregated classroom environment, but perhaps when and how we move through those systems, I think is something that we need to look at as well.
And thank you for that. And just as a really quick follow-up, it kind of segues into what I had written after was where, and it doesn't have to be answered now, but taken away as part of this thought exchange is really just where and how the support and staffing is being replaced. So like you say, we're looking at different models, different ways of providing that support, just if that can be like outlined to us as a committee so that we can understand where and how it's being replaced, that would be great. Just as a takeaway.
Where and how what is being replaced, sorry?
So if we're losing staff members, if we're cutting from certain models, if we're taking away certain supports, how is that support being replaced in an inclusive setting? How is it being replaced for, if we're losing, I'm making it up, I'm not good at spreadsheets, but if we're losing, 6 EAs or 6 teachers, or what does that look like for students in schools on the ground? So just so we can understand how that sort of support is still being provided to the students, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Chair. Just to add some context and content to the question that you asked about the transparency around budget priorities and how we balance the budget and where does special education fit within this whole process. We're going through a budget process that is basically being launched right now that ultimately will lead to a passage of the budget towards the end of June or earlier in June. And all of the changes that are made in the budget and in the various line items will be completely transparent. So you'll see what the priorities are, you'll see what reductions are being proposed in what areas, because as Kate said, we are starting with the deficit position. My goal going into this process is not only to balance the budget, but to balance the budget in a way that we can end up in the end by investing more in educational assistance in the classroom. That's the clear feedback that came from parents. It's the feedback that I get from from our director and the entire team and principals and teachers where the stress is acute and where we can have the greatest impact for the greatest number of students. So this budget process that you were asking about, it is following, it's an innovative approach we're taking this year, which is a student-first resource optimization project that's being led by our Director of Education, and it's being managed by a team that otherwise would be supporting governance services across the board. So we've repurposed that knowledge and talent to really focus in this area. So we're doing a deeper dive in ways that we have not done in the past. So we're looking for efficiencies. We're looking for realignment that support and structures that better support students in the classroom. And I would say this, Kate had been talking about some of the work that she has been doing over the past couple of months. So as superintendent, I'll say this, when the minister was here in the fall, I think he was sitting in the chair you're in, Anthony, and he met with the entire senior leadership team to get a better understanding of what was the circumstance, the situation, the challenges that were facing the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board. The first person I turned to advise the minister on the challenge of this board was to Kate. who gave a very clear, passionate, informed, professional perspective on the unique circumstances that we face in the Ottawa Carleton District School Board when it comes to special education. I would say this, every time I'm with Kate, she's, exceptionally well informed, and professional and effective. And working with her, she is doing the deep dive, looking at the practices of other school boards. And sometimes, how they're structured, how they're organized, can yield a different result when it comes to funding. I think other districts have figured out, ways to navigate that system where we could end up with more funding at the end of the day. So we want to make sure we're making best use of the formula that is out there, and in certain cases to advocate for changes in the funding formula as it comes to special education. You asked about, how do we know that special education isn't the first place we look at for funding? How do we know that we're looking at those other areas? Well, that's something that I've mentioned at this table before, which is special education isn't the first place to look. It's it's the last place to look for savings because of the need and the vulnerability of the students. So I am, and with the team here, doing a line by line analysis of all of the spending that we're undertaking. And I'm also looking at the spending that we're not waiting for the budget to pass in June, that is effective in September. We're looking at the spending that's going on in this district today, from the time that I was appointed supervisor. Sometimes this comes to me in the form of spending requests. We've got this initiative we want to undertake, approve or not, and we have a discussion about those, and some things go ahead, and some things that are not focused on students and success in the classroom, don't go ahead. And as we learn about those areas of pressure in spending right now, they will get incorporated into the budget on a go-forward basis. Some of the things, don't come to me for review and approval, but because I'm here and at the board and talking to staff and parents and observing, sometimes it's just asking the right question at the right time and probing to say about some of our operations. I'll give you an example where we had a system leaders meeting. This is all the principals and superintendents, where there was arrangement made with a keynote speaker. And when I found out that keynote speaker would cost for essentially 1 hour speech more than we pay an executive assistant for an entire year, that contract was canceled, and that did not go ahead. So that was a case of, because if I ever ask the principals, this is when I talk with principals and I ask about the support that they get, from the district. I said, if you had a choice between getting, this offering or an EA, what would you pick? 10 times out of 10, it's an EA. I look at the hundreds of thousands of dollars that we spend and have spent for many years on this board on advertising. Advertising that is designed to attract students to come to the OCDSB. I fundamentally question the premise and a practice of using money, public money, for one public institution to compete against another, using resources that would otherwise be dedicated to the classroom. So that program is canceled. We are no longer using paid advertising to try to attract students. Our best ambassadors for attracting students to our district are our principals, who are on the front line, who meet with parents, who are making inquiries about which school board they should go to or which school that they should attend. So, these are areas where we can, to your question about what are we doing to make sure that, we're coming to the table with a thorough analysis of what we're spending today and whether it's purposeful and impactful. That is happening, each and every day. And I value greatly the advice that comes, from Stacy, from our team, from Kate, and from this table, as priorities are set and as the budget, works its way to final approval in June. So I'm here at this meeting, and I'll be here at every meeting listening to, your ideas and perspectives. I was, at Crystal Bay School, you know, seeing, you know, what happens and, you know, the challenges that they face and, you know, talking to the principals there. This all becomes, you know, part of the challenge that we have, the budget process that we have, and we'll learn from other districts and what they're doing. That's part of our process. So your engagement and your ideas and your concerns will be, you know, well incorporated into the budget that's ahead. So that's the process that we're following. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I
appreciate-
redirected your question to Kate because
That's
I
okay.
wanted to answer.
No, I appreciate the transparency and the clarity there, that helps a lot, so I appreciate that, thank you.
We're gonna take one last question regarding this, so Catherine Pullman.
Hi, thank you. My question, I actually have two, but I can do it quickly. My question is related to the fact that as we've been discussing the models for special education over the past couple of years, it's always been made clear that it was not a change towards a different model, such as integration or the fact that we have consistent classes, that the change was not for any financial reasons. That was always made very clear, and that was also that, if instead of we move toward an integration model, it actually could potentially be more expensive. So I'm wondering how that will factor in, that messaging that's been given out to us for the past couple of years about the financial demands of our model versus a fully integrated model. My second question is, I'm wondering if there's any, when we're talking about EAs and classes and schools, I'm wondering if there's any way that we could track, I know that we track exclusions very carefully, and I'm wondering if there's a way that we track exclusions in terms of how, is there a way that could be resolved, or those students could be properly supported if there were adequate EAs to support those students? And I'm wondering if that maybe there's some data along with that's being tracked for that. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Catherine. So, I guess with respect to the first question, my stance is not that I think reducing specialized program classes would save us money. What I am suggesting is that we have resources tied up in our specialized program classes that make it more difficult to allocate those resources to other areas of special education spending. So I completely agree with you that we have talked at length about the fact that an inclusive model is not about cost savings. In fact, in many cases, it might cost more to support students in an inclusive classroom model. I think the struggle that we have as a district is that we have so many resources put towards very specific specialized program classes where we could be having more inclusive practices if we could open up some of those resources, make them more available for support across the system in less restrictive ways for students. So I wasn't by any stretch trying to say that we would be saving money in a more inclusive model. I think we need to look at how we use the resources we have in a way that can support students in least restrictive environments. So that's what I would say about that. In terms of the tracking for exclusions and if more educational assistants could offset some of that, I can look into that. I think that we don't necessarily have data correlated directly to exclusions and students who might benefit from the support of an educational assistant at some point throughout their day, nor would I know necessarily if the students who are being excluded are currently accessing EA support. So that's a bit of a tricky one, but I appreciate what you're getting at, and I appreciate that what you're suggesting is that perhaps there would be fewer exclusions if some of the students who were excluded had more direct support. And so I appreciate that that's likely what you're trying to get at.
Do you have another question?
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you very much.
It's related to one of my things I wanted to bring to the table today. It's the IEP balance between IEPs and psychological assessments. This is huge backlog. I have complaints constantly about this. And it's the $3,500 to $5,000 psychological assessments from professionals that are needed to feed into the IEPs. And these are like, one, they're costly, and there's huge backlog. They take, right now, the backlogs are from right now 3 to 4 years. It might even go up to 5 years for all I know. But it's a very long, and it's so bad that psychologists, psychiatrists are not even accepting clients. And that's very frequent. I know, and I'm being told. And the problem is, and so you can't even get an IEP done at council, so it needs, and yes, we've been working through this, that you can get an IEP still done, but still parents are complaining, and so there's still work to be done. And so there's still work to be done. I'm trying to say,
Yeah.
and.
I think we have to be cautious in how we talk about different types of assessments, because you don't need to have a full psychological assessment or any full assessment to have an IEP. An IEP is a result of a conversation. There's anecdotal evidence, there's assessment data, there's all sorts of different pieces of information that could feed into the development of an IEP, and even identifying when a student truly needs an IEP. So I think that those conversations are really nuanced and individualized. I don't disagree with you that if a family is looking for an assessment and they're feeling like that's a missing piece of information that they would like to have about their child, certainly that we hear as well that there are concerns that they can't readily access the type of assessments perhaps that they want right in that moment. But certainly you do not need to have that kind of assessment to have the IEP process started. But I think that gets to some of your former comments, all of you, about helping families to navigate the system, to truly understand what can support their child through their learning needs at that time. And so it's certainly noted, but I would caution any family who believes they need a full assessment to begin to have a conversation with their school about their child's learning needs.
All right, amazing conversations, but we've gotta be mindful of time, so we're going to move on. So we're gonna move on to item 7, department update. So I'd call on Superintendent Stout to provide the report.
Thank you very much. So I was going to start off this evening speaking about the Student Focus Optimization Project. Certainly the supervisor and Director Kay shared in their parent updates this week that we have launched into this project, and it's running in parallel with our annual budget process. I wanted to highlight for you kind of the 3 overarching goals around sustainability and restoring the district's long-term financial sustainability, looking at alignment to ensure that strategically we are realigning resources to prioritize student achievement and well-being, and optimization to optimize the impact of central resources to better serve students in schools. And so the leadership team is actively engaged in this work, as you have heard this evening. Your feedback from this evening will certainly be part of that consideration in our planning. In addition, I'll just remind you that annually we do go through a review of the programs and services that we offer through Learning Support Services. And so through this process, we do look at data about vacant pupil placements. We look and collaborate with principals and learning support consultants about our specialized program classes. We consult with the planning department about the opening and closing of classes and potential movement of classes. And all that helps us bring forward a plan for the upcoming school year. So as part of that work, there are layers of communication, as you've heard, that occur. We'll bring forward a draft to the supervisor, and we'll share that information with principals and staff, collaborating with human resources, and then of course the direct conversations with families regarding that information when it is confirmed. Confirmation timelines around that usually begin around the start of March, and so we'll be bringing forward an update next month regarding that. I wanted to also share that in mid-January, January 19th, we did launch the Student and Family Support Office. This is in response to the Minister directing school boards to open this office, and it is part of PPM 170. So this office provides additional avenues for students, parents, and caregivers to get timely help with complex questions and concerns regarding their child's education. There is an intake form on the website, so it's right on the front page if you go to OCDSB.ca. But there also is an email, supportoffice@ocdsb.ca, and you can also phone the main phone line and be connected to that office as well. When a family connects to the office, you can expect that the office will help to direct you to the person who can help to answer your question and to address your concern. We do have obligation to acknowledge the inquiry within 2 business days, but also to answer your question within 5 business days, acknowledging that if we can't come to full resolution, that we'll continue to work together on how we can come to a resolution and provide an estimate for that response.
Can I ask a quick question about that, Maura? Is it
Sure.
right fast? No?
Sure.
We just had questions from our organization about if there are implications to the school board budget as a function of those offices, and if so, where we might see that line show up.
So my understanding is there's not direct resources that's been provided for the family office. However, what I will say is that we have been able to build that structure within. I don't know if you want to add anything further, but that certainly within our current structure, we've been able to create that office.
I can address that a little bit more. Thank you, Kate. So it's actually a great example of the philosophy behind the student focused resource optimization project, in that we were able to, I would say this district had strong structures in place to start in terms of directing parents, guardians, and community to the person they needed to be in touch. So it was an opportunity for us to take a look at what we were doing, strengthen some areas where there were gaps, and certainly to ensure that our services were in line with requirements of PPM 170. Importantly with this, there are accountability measures and the expectation that we are tracking how we do. So we were able to use existing technologies that the district has access to in order to support the back end, so that we are able to meet those requirements. And it's a real opportunity for us to be monitoring how we're doing in that regard, and making tweaks and changes as we have more experience with the system.
Will there be, thank you, Stacey, will there be opportunities in the future to hear a bit about the requests that are going there, and if they're relevant to the SEAC table? Is that part of the data that's maybe being collected through that channel?
Yeah, absolutely. So there is standardization across the boards that have implemented the Student and Family Support Office, and certainly requests and questions related to students with special education needs is one of the required categories.
Okay.
So we will not, be able to provide necessarily the specifics, but we can certainly give you the proportions in terms of the requests that are coming forward. And as always, and especially in this area, the first question that is asked, and certainly with any of the materials that support the Student and Family Support Office, we always do encourage the very first place that parents are going is to the school, and just ensuring that they are aware of how to contact their teachers, their principals, as they are almost always the best resource for them to get the information they need regarding their child.
Yeah, great, thanks so much. Sorry, Kate, I interrupted you.
That's okay. I wanted to share with you that you've heard us speak about the Attendance and Re-engagement Initiative, and so that is an initiative that we do in partnership with Program Services. Our social workers work alongside guidance counselors and in helping to re-engage students who have been out of school for some time. And so we are currently we're in the next session of that. We have 20 students who are participating with their families in getting re-engaged, back connected back to school, and building plans for them to be coming back to school. And so that's a really important piece of work that's been happening over the last few years, and we're happy to see that continue. Wanted to highlight for you this evening some webinar series that are being launched by School Mental Health Ontario. There are 4 online virtual sessions that are being hosted. These can be found on the School Mental Health Ontario website in the By Your Side Learning Hub. This is a specific resource designed by School Mental Health Ontario for families and parents to access and to be thinking about the mental health needs of their children. And so specifically on March 5th, there's a balanced device use webinar. On April 10th, there's a webinar about vaping. On May 7th, there's a webinar exploring body image. And on June 5th, there's a webinar exploring anxiety. All of those times and registrations can be found on the website. We'll also be adding them to our website under the mental health tab, so you can find those easily if those are of interest to you. Lastly, I'd like to highlight that February 24th is Toonie Tuesday. This is a fundraiser for the Education Foundation of Ottawa. The Education Foundation of Ottawa is vital to the OCDSB as it removes many economic barriers to ensure every student has equitable access to the things they need to engage in learning. This includes providing essential items such as backpacks and winter clothing, nutritional programs, and support for the proper gear for co-op placement. Where possible, students are asked to bring a toonie on February 24th or more if able to support the important work across our district. Those are all of my updates. Did you have anything else you wanted to add, or did you agree?
No, I think it's a great summary.
Okay,
Yeah.
fantastic. So that's all for me this evening.
Are there any questions? Sonia?
Just have a short one. What's the project name again? Sorry, I keep dropping it.
Yeah, it's a real mouthful,
Are
but
they
you know
gonna try
what? The advantage is it doesn't actually lend itself to an acronym, so we have not added to an extensive list of acronyms. It's the Student Focused Resource Optimization Project.
If you go online and you look at the supervisor's message, there's a summary of that on the
Thank you
website.
so much.
And in Stacy's messages as well.
Are there any other questions?
I was wondering, for the Ottawa, the education fund, is that run by the school board?
No, it's actually a charity. So it has its own, it is associated with the school board, it has its own board of directors. Certainly we have many of our staff that volunteer their time to serve on the board, but it is the charity that's associated with the district, but it's not directly run by the district.
So it's dedicated for the school board?
Its sole purpose is to support the students of the OCDSB, but it's not like a department within the board. It's the charitable arm of the district.
Are there any other questions? I always wait a little bit because as soon as I think there are none, I put my head down and I look.
I raised that question because school councils have, because I brought it up before at the committee of the whole budget, I believe, in terms of, because school councils have raised concerns about how, at LCAS too also, in terms of fundraising for underprivileged schools, and I've brought it up as an initiative also, like how we can do it for special education, like for our specialized program schools, having fundraising for those special, less privileged schools that have more needs than other schools, and for the special needs schools, providing resources for them, in particular, more like not just for schools in general, for like for food programs, and we see in this foundation, but because there's we discuss this frequently enough at OCASC, is for example, like there's some schools that fundraise more easily than other schools, just because the nature of where they are, their demographics, the socio-demographics, And so for their own internal fund, because the school board does have fundraising mechanisms, and also the school councils also have their fundraising activities, and they're able to fundraise more than in certain ways some schools than others. And sometimes the challenge is having a mechanism to be able to sometimes not just fundraise for your own school council, but also sometimes be able to fundraise without legal challenges to be able to give to another school council, or I mean a school or yeah.
So it's a really good point, and Superintendent Dua through PIC spends a lot of time and has been working closely around kind of a sister school support system, so that exactly what you're describing can happen, and certainly that is a hot topic at the parent involvement committee.
Any more questions? All right, so we're gonna move on to new business. Is there any new business for this evening? Okay, Lindsay?
Just, if anyone wants an overview of the PIC from
Yes.
January 14th, 15th. There's honestly not much to report. It was a fairly administrative meeting. They're sort of, they went through their mandate, they elected their executive, and identified folks who would attend other meetings on their behalf, like the cow budget and ad hoc policy review, which is no longer ad hoc, if I understand correctly. So really they're just sort of, they're getting themselves set up for the work for the remainder of the year. I mean, I learned a lot about their mandate and stuff, but I don't think I need to repeat that here. So really it's just to say there's not much to report on this one, but I think my next report on their next meeting might be of greater interest. They're gonna talk about a mental health initiative that's got some provincial funding attached.
Thank you very much for attending that, Lindsay. All right. Okay, is there any other new business for this evening? All right, so seeing no new business, I'm gonna move on to the upcoming meeting dates. The next one is Wednesday, March 4th, 2026. And I now declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you so much, everybody.